Good afternoon. My name is Jay Mitchell. I'm with the Indiana Department of Transportation, and welcome to the Indiana Department of Transportation's Town Hall meeting for the statewide Transportation Improvement Program, which is a 4-year programming document that outlines all federal dollars that will be spent on projects that INDOT has prepared and is planning to build in one way or another or initiate a phase on for the next 4 years. The phases in the STIP are preliminary engineering, right-of-way purchase, or it could also be construction, the final stage. This is a decision-making document, so we are asking for the public's input on this, and we are also asking to see if you have questions or comments about any particular project and so forth. I must say that if you have a question about a project, there are many projects in the STIP, so we may not be able to get to your actual question on the project today, but if we can't get an answer today, we will certainly get an answer to the question and get it posted here for everyone to see and on our website at INDOT. The structure of today's meeting will be a virtual town hall meeting. We will start out with a presentation about the STIP itself, providing valuable information about the STIP, how it's developed, what goes into the STIP, and so forth. During that presentation, we will periodically stop the meeting, or the presentation rather, and we will open up the floor to some questions and take a few moments to answer questions and then come back to the finalized part of the presentation as well. We have participating with us today from INDOT, several fields within INDOT, and they will be our panel that will be here to answer questions or to address comments that we received. We have Roy Nunnally from our planning and programming department today. He is the supervisor of that particular area. And we also have, and perhaps we can put Roy's picture up here in just a moment here. I'll see if the director can do that. I don't see Roy yet, but he will be showing up later. Also, oh, there he is. Roy. Roy is waving. Thank you. We also have participating Michael McNeil, and Michael is the STIP coordinator for INDOT. In addition to Michael, we have April Leckie, and she is the programming manager for everything that is programmed at INDOT. It all goes through her office. And then we also have Brandon Bergoa, who is our bike and pedestrian coordinator. He's also doing a dual job today. He's working the board behind the scenes. So Brandon is here to answer bicycle and pedestrian questions as well. Jason Castile is here today. There's Jason, and he is with our transit section at INDOT. He is the transit planner for the entire state of Indiana, so he knows very much about transit, and just about any question you might have on transit, Jason will be in a position to answer that question. Also joining us today, we have Vanetta Keefe. Vanetta is our rail program manager, and like Jason with transit, Vanetta knows just about everything there is to know about railroads within Indiana. So those are our people that are from INDOT that will be participating as the panel in the background. They will answer questions when the time comes. We will start out this particular presentation very shortly. But before we do that, I want to let everyone know that if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, what you can do is submit a comment if you're joining in by a computer. On the right side of your screen, there's a chat room, and you can submit a comment there, and we will get to that comment or question when the time comes. And if you happen to be joining us by phone today, all you have to do is press *6 on your phone to unmute your phone, and then there will be an INDOT representative standing by to take your question, and that representative will then forward your question to everyone so we can see it and then get an answer for you. So having given you the introductions, again, we'll start the meeting's presentation. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Roy Nunnally. Roy?
Thanks, Jay. Hi, I'm Roy Nunnally. I am the Director of Transportation Planning and Programming here at INDOT Central Office. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the statewide Transportation Improvement Program known as the STIP. So what is the STIP? The STIP is a federally required document, a planning document that covers at least 4 years. INDOT's document is about 5 years. We know of some other DOTs that may have documents out to 10 years. But Federal Highway recognized only the 4 years because those are the ones that have the federal aid that goes out to that point. The rest is illustrative, but it is included in our document. The STIP is also a planning and programming document, not an accounting document, that identifies funding by activity type, by phase, by funding, by fiscal year. Our fiscal year is by our state fiscal year, which starts in July 1st, ends in June 30th of each year. The STIP includes projects that are federally funded, projects and programs that are federally funded by Federal Highway, FTA, and other sources. It also includes projects that are regionally significant. When we say regionally significant, it has some level of regional impact. For example, if you had a hospital or a convention center, that would be regionally significant. The same thing with our transportation system. If it connects to those type of facilities or it has some regional impact, that is considered regionally significant. And with those projects in the STIP that are regionally significant, you may see some projects that are 100% state funded and some that are locally funded. Some of the local, state, and federally funded project improvements include non-state jurisdictional facilities. These are INDOTs responsible for interstates, U.S. highways, and state highways. And so anything outside of that is considered a non-INDOT facility. It also includes passenger rail and public transit, freight mobility, bike and pedestrian improvements as well, and national park improvements. And we'll talk about some of those in the next few slides. What is in the STIP and why is it important? In the STIP, there are a number of projects and improvements. Part of that includes roadway improvements, which may include added travel lane projects where you are adding a lane, whether that's a through lane or turn lanes, building new facilities, whether that's a new interchange or a new road. It also includes roadway reconstruction where we're completely tearing out a road and just rebuilding it as is or modernizing it or resurfacing the roads. Roadway improvements also includes operational improvements such as traffic signal modernization, where we're adding the latest and greatest as far as traffic signals that can talk to other signals up and downstream of a corridor, and that can report information and that can be timed and controlled from remote locations. The same with our intelligent transportation system that is also collecting information and data and providing that to the motoring public as to the condition of the facility, whether there is facilities that may have some delays or some incidents or some detours or what have you. Operational improvements also include road diets where we're taking a corridor that may be constructed as a 4-lane or 6-lane facility that no longer serves that purpose at that demand level, and we're able to take away or repurpose a lane or two to include bicycle and pedestrian facilities, parking to control the flow and safety of the corridor. Operational improvement also includes intersection and interchange improvements, and we also have safety improvements as well that are huge and very important, from pedestrian crosswalks, sidewalks, and ramps to slide corrections where you might have terrain that are rocky terrain where rock and debris may be falling on the roadway or the roadway may be sliding off its alignment. In that case, those type of improvements are included, as well as roadway crossings and geometric deficiencies where there might be some sight distancing issues. A roadway may be curvy or might be difficult to see around a corridor. And that causes problems when you are encountering a slower moving vehicle or a non-motorized vehicle, such as a horse, buggy, or a pedestrian or a cyclist walking or riding. Also included in our STIP are bridge improvement projects from new bridges, bridge structures, bridge rehabilitation, reconstruction and replacement, and various maintenance of these bridge facilities, from inspections to bridge painting to debris removal, where we're going underneath the bridge and maybe the waterbed, we're removing sediments and other debris that may block the flow of water. It also includes small structures. Small structures is what we consider anything that's under 20 feet. Any structure that's under 20 feet. Bridge structure is called a small structure. And culverts, pipes, and pipelines. But our STIP not only includes just roadway projects, it also includes non-roadway improvements, such as transit and passenger rail that uses federal funds. This may include transit operational assistance, where you're paying for an agency's administrative cost or for facilities management and those type of activities. It's also used to purchase and vehicle fleets, from vans to paratransit to buses to rail car purchases, equipment purchases such as ticket taking devices, communication and radio devices, infrastructure where there may be replacing a rail line or doing some repairs or remodeling of buildings or bus shelters, emergency repairs and things of that nature. It also includes improvements from national parks. So that may include, in the national parks, trails and dedicated bike and pedestrian facilities. And on roadways, it may also include any landscaping or planning that will go along with that corridor, as well as planning and technical studies that are using federal funds. So why is the STIP important? Well, the STIP is a comprehensive list of multimodal projects that are programmed over phases in multiple years. So that's critical, because you may be looking at the STIP document and you may see your project listed in that document maybe more than one time, 2 to 3 times. It may be in the preliminary engineering phase where they're doing a lot of design work. It may be in the right-of-way phase in another fiscal year where they're buying the right-of-way in parcels of land to complete the structure of the project. Or you may just have it listed another time in a later year that may be actual construction activities. It is also closely coordinated with our planning partners and resource agencies and transit providers in other documents that we'll talk about later. It established the roadmap for both short and long-term plans for continuous progress, and most importantly, it is federally required for the approval of federal funds, documents, and permits. At this stage, we're going to go into the Q&A, and I will turn this back over to Jay.
Thank you, Roy. Appreciate it. As Roy noted, we will open the floor up to some questions and or comments. But before I do so, I want to remind everybody that if you have a question about anything related to INDOT, that is, you're traveling on the road, you see something that doesn't look right, could be some debris on the road, could be a dead animal near the road or on the road. It could be something that recently happened, or even a pothole. Those are fairly common complaints. If you see that, if you want to contact us, what you need to do, the best way is simply you can call our customer service line, and that is 1-855-463-6848. That's 1-855-463-6848. And there are people standing by that will take your call, and they will respond to get the right people to the right place to take care of whatever the issue might be. In addition, if you want to contact us online, all you have to do is type in a search engine, INDOT for you, and it's INDOT for you, and it will take you to a location through your search engine where you can submit the request online, and it will be responded to in a timely fashion as well. So today we'll start answering some questions, and I'll just quickly check the stream here. It looks like we do have a question coming in from looks like Demetrius, and So if my, yes, thank you, my director has flipped that over so we can all see that. So the question is, what more is the state of Indiana going to do for passenger rail transportation and transit? And specific projects specific projects are in the pipeline. Passenger rail is seeing revival in the country and is historically and currently the most efficient form of transit. The federal government is increasing its share of passenger rail line funding, and the state of Florida is leading the way in privatization of passenger rail with bright time. Funding options are endless. It's a shame that Indianapolis, the site of the, I don't see the rest of this at this time, but let me see if I see it over here. No, anyway, so at this time, since it's a rail question, I'm going to see if Vanetta can answer this question or address the comment. Vanetta, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, I think it's Demetrius Villa. Thank you. That is a great question. And I want you to be aware that Indiana is investing a lot of money in rail, particularly commuter rail. So right now our focus is on double tracking the South Shore line in Northwest Indiana and completing the Westlake extension, which will take the line which will make a connector from Dyer, Indiana to Hammond, Indiana, which would connect with the South Shore. So I just want to put that out there because Indiana is spending a lot of money on rail, particularly its commuter rail, and we are very involved in planning what we will do with passenger rail in the state. So on the 19th, we have our last stakeholder meeting for the state rail plan. And if you are interested in attending that, just drop a note in the chat with your contact information and I will get you an invitation. And yes, we are, everyone that works in the passenger rail industry, particularly on the state side, is excited to see the amount of interest and money that's going into revitalize passenger rail in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanetta. Demetrius, I owe you an apology. I kind of butchered your question. I will apologize. I've situated my screen such as that I get some glare on it, so I do apologize in this case. Going back to the questions, looks like we do have a question or comment here, and that is, how is it determined what projects are part of the STIP and what projects are not? That's an excellent question. I'm going to start with April Lucky to see if she can quickly provide an answer to that. April, are you out there?
Yes, I am. We have at INDOT asset management teams that are broken out in 4 areas: mobility, safety, roadside, and bridge. And they go through the process of all of our projects that come in through our call from the district offices and score those, and then make the decisions of what's going to go forward into our capital program and what's not. And the capital program projects that are approved end up in our STIP document. The other stuff goes into our maintenance work program, and there's usually smaller things, patching and herbicide treatment, mowing, things like that, that is taken care of with maintenance funds, and those are 100% state funds. So those won't show up in our STIP document, but anything that through our, darn it, I lost the word, through our software programs for pavement and bridge and things like that, we'll go through the STIP process and be part of the STIP document.
Thank you, April. I think Roy's going to expand on that a little bit in his presentation as well. I do know that the STIP is made up with projects that are data-driven projects. They do not get into the STIP unless they meet the criteria that they are, one, needed, that they score well in the data in the different program management groups, and then also depends on what kind of funding is available in any particular year. So that is one of the critical things as well that goes into the STIP. Just quickly checking the queue here for questions. And it looks as though we might be pretty good right now on questions. And so at this time, I think I will shortly turn this back over to Roy. But if you do have questions, please submit them through the chat box on the right side of the screen. Or if you happen to be calling in, you can press *6 on your phone, and that will unmute your phone. And you can ask your question to an INDOT representative who will then forward it to us here. Roy, at this time, I think I will turn this over to you to go back to the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Next, we're going to talk about how is the STIP developed. INDOT has a 2-year development cycle on our STIP, which is amended monthly. There's extensive coordination with our planning partners in the various multimodal documents. It is a very collaborative and decentralized centralized process. As you can see the graphic on your right, you'll see that we have the multimodal freight and a long-range transportation plan. INDOT's long-range transportation plan is basically a policy-based plan. It's non-project specific. However, we do have our next level roads program, which is about a $60 billion program that's scheduled over a 20-year period that looks at projects to basically finish what we already started and to take care of the assets that we already have. So that's the focus of that program. So that is in the longer range, 20-year plus range set. That feeds into our asset management window, which is 10 years. It usually takes about 10 years for us to do analysis to look at the life cycle cost of each of our assets and to determine when certain treatments can be provided to optimize the life of that asset, whether that's reconstruction, repavement, or resurfacing a roadway, or replacing it. So we do have a 10-year plan that looks at some of the goals that we've set, and how can we approach that? What type of funds we're going to need, and from that point, that feeds into our 5-year construction plan, which also is the same as our 4-year STIP. As mentioned earlier, our process for developing a STIP is very collaborative. We have a very collaborative approach that's decentralized and centralized. From the centralized portion of it, we do have regional coordination meetings that our planning team is responsible for developing, and which includes some of our partners from our districts, our MPOs, our Metropolitan Planning Organization, regional planning organizations, and local officials. And we typically meet late spring and early summer of each year, and we talk about some of the trends, some of the concerns, projects, some of the needs, everything from land use to economic development type improvements to mobility and safety. And so we spend probably about a half a day or more compiling those projects, documenting that information, and then we provide that to all those who participate. At that stage, the district is responsible for opening up a call for state projects. Again, state projects are projects that are on our interstates, U.S. highways, and state roads. And they typically open this call. It's usually for the 5th or further years. And so they start that process. And this is kind of where a lot of those regional meetings and projects that's coming in, whether that's from these regional meetings or from the locals or citizens, they feed into this call process. And at that time, the districts, the call is open July the 1st and ends in January the 15th. Between that time, the district is performing needs analysis based on all that different information that's coming from those different sources. They're doing preliminary scoping. They're looking at utilities. They're looking at environmental issues at a very preliminary early planning stage to look at what are some of the issues and what are some of the hurdles. They do estimate the cost, and they prioritize those needs based on what's in their districts and the input received. Once a district completes that assignment, and that is coordinated with our planning partners as well, the district take those projects and those prioritized lists, and they submit it to central office, to what we call the program management group. Now, there's basically two groups. There's the program management group, which is a body of executive and director, senior management personnel, that they provide the overview of the call. What are some of the goals that we are trying to establish and trying to reach in the next 5 to 10 years? And they also determine how funds are, diverted to the different 4 asset teams that we'll talk about. The 4 asset teams are bridge, roadway asset teams, which looks at some of the geotechnical, we talked about site distance earlier, rock slides, pavement, road reconstruction, mobility asset teams that may talk about and discuss and weigh in on projects that may include added travel lanes, operational improvements of a corridor, intelligent transportation systems, and those type of improvements. And then we have the safety team that can cover a lot of things, from everything from bridge, roadway to mobility, bike and pedestrian ramps and things of that nature. So what the program management group does, they determine, they're given a budget, let's say $1 billion, and they would determine what percent of that $1 billion will go to bridge, will go to roadway, will go to mobility assets, which also includes some of the bike and pedestrian, and what percent goes to safety. And they do such, and it's a very iterative process where they look at the impacts that have of INDOT meeting our goals and also extending our life cycle cost of those corridors. At that stage, when they're at the 4 asset teams, the 4 asset teams are made up of individuals from each of the districts. So you have bridge asset teams. They may have various representation from the 6 districts that we have, plus some of the central office, the planning staff. So it's very collaborative group. At that stage, at the asset level or the central office level, those individuals are primarily looking at trying to ensure that we are scoring or prioritizing or racking the project list based on statewide needs. So they're no longer looking at their particular district, they're looking at it from a statewide perspective. So once that is done, that is closely coordinated with our planning partners as well. Then there's opportunities for the public and stakeholders also to weigh in. And then once we get that part cleared up, then the plan is submitted to Federal Highway and Federal Transit Authority, Federal Transit Administration, for their review and hopefully approval. So here's just quickly how the STIP is developed. So it requires a lot of staff dedicated time over a 6 to 7 month period. But the first of that is the draft list of projects. So you see from November all the way until like April, the project lists are going out, are being developed and coordinated with our district partners, as well as our metropolitan planning and regional planning organization, particularly with our regional planning organization, who also have their version of the STIP. It's called the TIP, which is the Transportation Improvement Program, but it's more regional. So those projects have to be consistent. They have to be analyzed. Some MPOs, metropolitan planning organizations, they have air quality issues, or they have to do congestion mitigation analysis. So it's very iterative, and so that's the longer part of the process that requires a lot more of the coordination. At that same time, right about February timeframe, we're also looking at what are some of the targets, what are the fundings per fiscal year, and then we're working on the STIP verbiage as well. In between then, we're also doing a 45-day comment period, which our 45-day comment period started April 9th and will end May 25th. All of this is coordinated closely with our MPO partners throughout the process. At that stage, that is given to Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration for their review and hopefully approval of the planning document. So who's involved in the development of the STIP? You, the citizens, stakeholders, our planning partners, our resource agencies, all of you are involved in the development of our STIP, and your voice matters. There's plenty of stakeholder and public involvement opportunities from the various documents that we do public involvement in that ties back into the STIP. A few of those are our long-range transportation plan, which is currently 2018 to 2045, our freight mobility plan, which is a 10-year plan, as well as our 10-year asset management plan that looks primarily at bridges and pavement. We also include American for Disability Act transition plan, our state bike and pedestrian plan, which also was known as our active transportation plan. And, you know, there's a lot of outreach activities from MPO council workshops to hosted websites that we provide information to and solicit input that way, from freight and logistic industries that also weigh in and provide input into our process. But your voice matters. There are also some of the heavy individuals involved besides you, the citizen, is also our district offices, our metropolitan planning organizations, and our regional planning organizations. Our district office, INDOT has 6 district offices across the state. And they serve as the front line in terms of direct coordination with our stakeholders, our local officials, and citizens. Typically, when there's an issue, when there's a need, oftentimes that information gets to the district first, or it may be submitted to our central office, which gets back to our districts. But our districts are our key partners, and they are our front line. As we mentioned before, the districts manage the annual call for projects, and they are actively engaged in the central office asset management teams. They also participate in some of the MPO's technical advisory and board meetings. So they're directly involved with project management and the MPO tips. MPOs are also very critical in the involvement in the development of our STIP. MPOs are policy boards of organizations that are designed to carry out the planning process and by meeting the federal regs for their areas. They serve as a forum for local governments to provide short and long-term plans and visions to address related transportation concerns and issues. As we have mentioned, MPOs have policies and technical committee boards that are often open to the public. Oftentimes, these are, some MPOs have these meetings monthly, some have it every other month, some have it quarterly, and we do have one MPO that do have their meetings 2 times a year. So you would probably need to go to the website below, http://www.indianampo.com, and there you can find out information about the MPOs in your region, along with you can get access to their website and see what public involvement activities they got going on, projects, and when their meetings are located, as well as public meetings. But they do serve as our primary source of local and regional public stakeholder outreach for our INDOT planning process. RPOs, similar to the MPOs, carry out transportation planning process for more smaller non-metropolitan urban and rural areas. They also serve at the district, support the district offices and statewide planning efforts and processes. They do a lot of coordination with local planning, land use, and economic development related subjects in that area. They also are valuable resources for development and review of local thoroughfare plans that are mode specific, whether that's a roadway or transit or bike and pedestrian. They provide that information to us. And they also participate in our annual call for state projects through the regional annual region coordination meeting. For more information on RPOs in your area, you can visit www.iarc.cc. IARC, I always have a tough time saying this. It stands for Indiana Association of Regional Councils. And we have about 15 RPOs across the state. And there you can find out information for the ones in your area, information as far as meetings, projects, needs, and activities. Next is our next session of Q&A, and I will turn it back over to Jay.
Thank you, Roy. I'd like to point out that if anyone would like to access the draft STIP document, they may do so by using your search engine. We print it online, and what you can do is use your search engine and just simply type in Indiana Department of Transportation or even INDOT with your search engine, and that will then take you to the INDOT webpage. And then once you're on the home page, at present, you can scroll down to near the lower end of the page, and there actually is a banner with a link on that that will take you directly to the STIP page without having to go through other problems. But anyway, once at the STIP page, you can access the draft STIP in whole. The entire document is there. You can review it. And also, if you happen to have any questions or comments at that time, there is a form there that you can submit a comment or a question on, and we will answer that as well. I want to point out that this is the draft STIP. It's going to be online, and it will be, we are seeking at INDOT public comments and questions on the STIP, the draft STIP, until May 25th. And we actually will extend that a little bit beyond May 25th. But if you missed this opportunity today, you still have another opportunity right up until May 25th to submit questions and comments. And INDOT will address those questions and comments and even post those in the final STIP itself. So at this time, I'd like to remind everyone, if you happen to be calling in and you have a question, all you have to do is press *6 on your phone. That will unmute it. An INDOT representative will be standing by to take your question and relay it to us right here. And if you happen to be joining online, all you have to do is use the chat box on the right side of the screen and type your question and hit send, and it should get directly to us. So at this point, yes, we are open to questions and comments. So I'm looking at the queue now, and I don't see any. Maybe I see one, but if there is one, could Brandon slide it over for everyone to see, and we'll go from there. Okay, Brandon. A frequently asked question that we get is, what kind of roadblocks can happen to the STIP development process? Well, I'll try to answer that first. There are many roadblocks that you can run into with the development of a project. The most common situation would be where you are in the design, prior to the design phase, the environmental phase, where you might run into some sort of an environmental issue that you didn't anticipate or was greater than what you did anticipate, in which case it will delay the project for a while you do the additional assessments that are required to meet the regulations so that you can advance with your project. Another item that could happen is sometimes when you get ready to do some of the construction itself, at times you can run into something that was not anticipated, was not screened for when we did our initial trench digging at the location to see if there was anything there. You can find Native American remains occasionally or artifacts, and that will slow a project down because then we will have to consult with the appropriate Native American tribe on how we would proceed with those artifacts as well. In addition to that, a fairly common thing that we used to run into, I don't think we're running into this as much nowadays, But it used to be when we would get into a project that was near an intersection where there perhaps was a former gas station. If the gas station had tanks there that leaked and we didn't spot that in our initial drilling, and when we get to the project, we found hydrocarbons, then that would slow a project down, and that could slow the process down as far as delivering the project. So those are some of the things that can actually happen. They don't happen in every case, but they can happen. And there are a number of things. And INDOT does keep what we call a list of bench projects. So if a project is slowed down or can't advance for any reason, we can always move a project forward from the bench, and then that will take the place of it, much like a ball player gets wounded, then you replace him with another player. So that's that question. I hope I answered that question to everyone's satisfaction. Are there any other questions come in at this time? Oh, this is a good question, and this is very pertinent. Has the COVID pandemic impacted funding allocation in the current and future planning assumptions? Yes, it has, but not to the degree or severity that we thought it would. When COVID initially hit, and what happened was about this time last year, actually it was in March, April and March of last year, most of the nation in Indiana was pretty much the same. We went into sort of a shutdown mode for a while. And what that meant is people were not spending as much money, but more importantly, people were not traveling as much. And there were less goods being moved over the highways and so forth. So the bottom line is that meant that fewer dollars were being spent on gasoline and diesel fuel. And that is the primary source of funding for INDOT and for the Federal Highway Administration for paying for federal and state projects that are transportation related. So we did see an initial reduction in daily travel by about 38%, and it stayed fairly constant for about a month, possibly 2 months. But then during the summer, early summer, late summer, we saw the traffic build back up. It is building up. It is almost to pre-COVID levels. About, I think the last time I checked was about 85%. So people are driving more trucks are on the road, more fuel is being consumed, and therefore more funds are coming back into INDOT's coffers. Yes, we did take a slight hit, but the state's in very good financial shape after that hit by virtue of the fact that people are driving more again. And in addition to that, we did receive some additional COVID relief funding from the federal government on one of the recent bills that made up for some of the money that was lost or potentially lost. So we're in pretty good shape for the next 4 years. We anticipate and we hope that the COVID situation will continue to improve and that the economy in the United States will continue to improve, and that will mean more money flowing in through taxes that will pay for the roads and bridges that we are building in Indiana. I hope that answers your question and so forth. So again, I'd like to remind everyone, if you have a question, you can submit on the right side of the screen using the comment field and simply type in your comment and hit send, and we will see it here. In addition to that, if you're calling in by phone, you can hit *6 to unmute your phone, and an INDOT representative will be standing by to take your question and then relay it here for us to see. At this time, I'd like to turn the program back over to Roy so he can continue with the presentation. Roy, are you ready?
I am ready. Thanks, Jay. So next we're going to talk about how can you access STIP projects. There's two primary ways that you can access the STIP projects. One of the ways that is probably the most comprehensive way is through our Next Level Roads program. If you type in Next Level Roads, Indiana, it'll take you to this site where we have an interactive map of projects that you can access. This is probably the most comprehensive way. It includes not only the STIP projects, but it may include other projects that may not be funded or listed in the STIP. Oftentimes when we're dealing with the public or stakeholders, the questions that they're asking is, what's going on in my area? Where's my project? And in some cases, it can be a little confusing because if you have a project that is not in the STIP, you would assume that there's no project or activities going on in your area, which may not be factual. So This is the best place to start. Again, Next Level Roads Indiana, you type that in and this interactive map will be provided, a link will be provided to that. And you can click on any of the dots inside of the map, which you can drill down to get more information. And you can also set some of the filters where you can look at it for a specific district, whether the project is active, like funded, or if it's a future project that's maybe listed in our 10-year asset management plan or our 20-year Next Level Roads program that may not have the funds lined up, but we are committed to move forward with that type of improvement to address a need. You can also filter it by program, from bridge to safety to local, and show some of the local improvements as well that we have in our system. The more direct way to look at STIP projects, again, the STIP only has projects that are federally funded or projects that are state or locally funded that are regionally significant. So it won't have all the projects included in there, but you can go to the STIP document itself, and in the document, primarily probably about 80% of the document is just listings of projects by different categories and counties. So there's different slices of the project. So you can go there and look at projects that are in the STIP. You can also go to our website at in.gov/INDOT, INDOT /3132.htm. How can I provide input? You can get involved in the process in various ways. One way is to attend public meetings, such as this one, whether that's virtual or in person. Due to COVID, all of our meetings are virtual this year. You can also connect with your district offices, your MPOs or RPOs that also have routine meetings that maybe talk about a lot of the input, a lot of the projects that are feeding into the STIP. And that input, we follow up with the districts or the MPOs and RPOs to get that input and to put it into our STIP document. You can also sign up for email communications at Gov Delivery, at our Gov Delivery system. And that is either type in Gov Delivery Indiana, or you can go to www.in.gov/INDOT, /3074.htm. You can also share your thoughts about the STIP and get involved and provide your input through other sources, such as our online STIP comment form that's specific to the STIP, or you can email our STIP coordinator, and that will go into an inbox that is checked, I believe, multiple times per week, all throughout the year, whether it's this process for our 45-day comment period, or if it's for the monthly amendments, which we have a 7-day comment period that you can provide comment. But you can provide comment at any time. You can also mail in your comments to INDOT here at our INDOT office at 100 Senate Avenue, Indiana Government Center North, which is IGCN, room 758. And then you might want to say attention transportation planning, and that's in Indianapolis, Indiana 46204. As far as the STIP comment form, you can get that online at in.gov/INDOT /3132.htm, or you can again email our program coordinator at any time. At draftstip, that's one word, at indot.in.gov. As Jay had mentioned, we have our INDOT for You site that is staffed with experts centrally in our district office, and they work together. So you can go online, INDOT the number 4, the letter U, .com, and you can request information or provide input and feedback on everything from our STIP to long-range plan to multimodal documents to potholes to other issues that you may want to report or get responses to. And if you're not able to do online INDOT for you, you can also go to our phone site, INDOT for you phone site at 1-855 INDOT, the letter 4, or the number 4, the letter U, and that will take you directly to our phone services. At that stage, this concludes my presentation, and I will turn it over to Jay to open it up for questions and other information. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. I'd like to point out that the STIP, as Roy noted, is a 4-year document. It's a programming document for the next 4 years. But in Indiana, at INDOT specifically, we are a dynamic agency. We make a lot of changes. We have a lot of projects that are ongoing and new projects that come into the plan. And because of that, we update our STIP every 2 years as opposed to a 4-year cycle. And that keeps us in line with the state budget that's a 2-year budget. And that budget that's approved by the General Assembly and signed by the governor is then the evidence that we use to show the federal government, Federal Highway Administration, that our STIP is fiscally constrained for at least the first 2 years and very fiscally constrained for the first 2 years and then reasonably constrained for the second 2 years of the STIP. In addition to that, because we do change from time to time, we generally have an amendment cycle that lasts, that is 1 amendment per month. Sometimes we won't do an amendment, but generally we'll do an amendment to the STIP every month to keep it up to date. And the public has an opportunity for each of those amendments to make comments and to review any of those amendments as well. At this point, I'm going to look at the chat box, and there happens to be a comment in here, and I think we'll go ahead and bring that comment over, and it's from Steve. And it's just a comment. So Steve's comment is essentially, it is a waste of money and not going anywhere. Buy a car. All I can say is thank you very much, Steve, for your comments, and we appreciate you joining in today. And going back, are there any other questions or comments that have come in? I'd like to remind everybody you can still submit a comment in the chat box if you're joining us online. Simply type in your comment or your question and hit send. And then if you happen to be calling in by phone, you can hit *6 and that will unmute your phone, and an INDOT representative will take your question and forward it to us to discuss and then answer. So looking to see if there are any comments or questions that come in. We will be here for at least another 5 minutes to conclude the meeting, but I do want to talk about the next steps. So the next step for this draft STIP document is that we will complete this process for the public involvement, which is open until May 25th for you to submit comments. And then afterwards, we will then finish the document, make any final completions that we have to do or edits that we must do. We will then submit that document, the STIP, to the Federal Highway Administration and also to the Federal Transit Administration. They will then review the STIP document to see that INDOT fulfilled all of its obligations under the federal regulations. And if it has done so, then what they will do is they will issue an approval letter for the STIP. And that will, generally that comes sometime in July. We hope that it will come in July this year, and at which time it becomes the formal document and we move forward from there. And if there are any changes to the STIP at that particular time, then it would have to be through an amendment or an administrative modification. As I noted, amendments are done once every month. So again, we do value your input. If you would like to make a comment on the STIP, you may do so through the comment form on our STIP page. And you can also submit a comment through the chat box here and simply type in your comment and hit send, and it will be here. And if you are calling by phone, you can press *6 and that will unmute your phone and you can make a comment as well. Again, we will be here for another 3 minutes to take any further comments that you might have. I would like to thank everyone for participating in today's virtual STIP Town Hall meeting for the draft STIP that the Indiana Department of Transportation has prepared and will be submitting to the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration for approval. Sometime in May, we will submit that near the end of May, and then it will probably take at least 30 days for the federal entities to review the document, and then we would hope that they would approve that sometime in early July, which is just in time for the next state fiscal year for our projects to launch, so that we don't miss a beat in Indiana, and we keep our roads, our transportation system, our bus systems in good shape for the citizens of Indiana. Again, thank you so much for attending. I'm going to check the chat box one more time to see if I missed any questions. I don't appear to have missed any at this time, but I'm going to ask my my director, Brandon, if I missed anything, please put it in the box, and he will do so. He did so. Why is it critical to plan so far ahead? Well, I'm going to ask Roy again to answer this question. Why, Roy? Why is it so critical to plan so far ahead? What's that? Why do we do that?
Why? It's expensive. No, it's we plan so far ahead. It's really important for us to plan ahead because oftentimes these projects can be very complex. A lot of the projects, the major projects that you see going around in Indianapolis, around the state, are, were planned many years ago. I-69, there was talks about that for 20 plus years ago. Some of the improvements that we are making on our highway systems, same thing. So it takes a lot of coordination with our partners, our stakeholders, public input. Some projects require environmental studies, and which can also take some time. And then we have to coordinate with our utility partners. So a lot of planning is required for this. And it's critical for us to plan far ahead to prepare for that, but also to think, to be forward thinking, to look at some of the needs, some of the trends, and to have those conversations with our decision makers, our legislative teams, as to what are some of the needs, what are the funds that are needed. So it's very critical that we plan far ahead to be able to answer those questions. And with Indiana, we're always in good position when money do become available, because we do plan so far ahead that we are able to, whatever funds become available, whether that's state or federal, we have a program of projects on the shelf that we can take and move forward quickly, unlike other states.
Thank you, Roy. We're very close to the end of the meeting. I did want to touch on one thing. I have been advised that Steve, for his comment, he was actually responding to an early comment about rail service. So I did want to note that for everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining our meeting today. We very much appreciate it in INDOT. And if you happen to have a comment on the STIP itself, there's a STIP comment form. It's available at indot.gov/3132.htm. And we have that on the screen for you to review, and you can use that. However, if you miss this, you can always just type in a search engine, Indiana Department of Transportation, which will take you to our homepage, which from there, there's a banner at the bottom of the screen that will take you to the STIP page, and you can submit your comment there as well. They will go to the same place. And we will make sure we answer your comment or your question, and we will put that response in the final document. Again, thank you so much for participating in this virtual town hall meeting for the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. We are all working together to bring the best transportation system to the citizens of Indiana. Thank you again.